Welcome to the Jubilee Museum Series. I'm Wanda Dengel, your host, and joining me is our good friend, Shawn Kenney. Welcome,
Wonderful
my
to be
friend.
back. Wonderful to be back.
We're here in the studio, and we are going to talk about two particular saints that are celebrated during the month of February, Saint Valentine and Saint Blaise. And we'll show you the connection that Saint Blaise has to Croatia, particularly Dubrovnik, Croatia. Shawn has brought with him something that is very old, that's in the museum's collection, that is really connected to Saint Blaise. Shawn, would you like to tell us a little bit about what you have brought with you?
Yes, so this is the candles that are used for the Saint Blaise blessing, actually. Normally the blessing would be held for his feast day, which would be February 3rd, and we actually just celebrated that. But it's interesting because an interesting fact about the church is a Sunday Mass, if there's a feast day on a Sunday, the Sunday Mass trumps the feast day. So we actually did not celebrate the Feast of Saint Blaise this year, but a lot of churches still would do the throat blessing after the Mass, but any Sunday Mass triumphs over a feast day. So it's kind of an interesting fact for you. And another interesting fact pertaining to this as well is Holy Week. Sometimes we have a rare occurrence where St. Patrick's Day will fall during Holy Week. It happened a couple years ago. And guess what? Holy Week trumps over that. So there really wasn't a St. Patrick's Day that year. You can still celebrate, and I think our Bishop of Columbus actually allowed people to eat meat for that Friday just out of respect, but that is something that during Lent we can't have meat on Fridays. So that was out of respect. He said, you know, I will allow you to eat meat in honor of St. Patrick's Day, but still it's Holy Week. So kind of an interesting little fact there. But again, these are candles that are used for the blessing of throats for the Feast of Saint Blaise. And it's a beautiful old tradition. And of course, it follows after Candlemas, which is the official end of Christmas, which is February 2nd. So that's where the candles come in. But Saint Blaise is a neat saint, and I'll let you talk a little bit about him.
Okay, all right. Well, if we can bring up that map of Croatia, we can see. There we go. Could we get a full view of that without us in the picture? There we go. Whoops. Can we go over a little bit so we can see Croatia and Italy? Croatia would be on the left-hand side. You'll see a red outline of the country. And it is right next to Italy as soon as we can get that possibly moved over. Well, in any event, Croatia has a connection to Saint Blaise. Although Saint Blaise was from Asia Minor, and we can see there on the map, you see Turkey, and the country of Armenia is to the right of that. And Saint Blaise was born in Sebastia, Cappadocia, which was in Armenia at the time, but now is part of Turkey. And there we have a picture of Croatia. You see it outlined in red, and next to Croatia you see Italy. And the saints that we are going to talk about today are, of course, Saint Blaise, who has a connection to Croatia, and Saint Valentine, who lived in Italy in the area of Rome. Shawn, could you tell us a little bit about Valentine, since that's a big celebration here in the United States, Valentine's Day?
So first of all, you know, we go about our daily business and these holidays come. And Valentine's Day is a big one. Every holiday that pretty much is not a American holiday, you know, 4th of July, Memorial Day, Labor Day, is a Christian holiday for the most part. Easter Sunday, Christmas, St. Patrick's Day, St. Valentine's Day. Even, you know, Halloween is attributed to All Souls and All Saints Day from its origination. So it's interesting that we go through these holidays every year and we have no idea that, you know, Valentine's Day, Saint Valentine, who was a bishop in Rome in the 3rd century, very neat. But you know, remember when you're having chocolates and, you know, going to dinner with your loved one, that this is an actual feast day of the saint himself. So Bishop Valentine, a neat man, of course, was martyred for being a Christian, was known for just loving people, you know, God's radiating off of him, his Christian love for people. So that's really our big association with Saint Valentine when it comes to love. Now we've got these little images of Cupid, you know, holding, you know, the arrow and it going through a heart. That kind of stuff is all Hollywood. But again, this is a beautiful feast day. So again, remember on these days, you know, of Saint Valentine, you know, the love for Christ, the love for the world, the love for people. And how important that is. So, you know, and as a married couple, when you're in love with somebody, you know, you should be radiating the love of Jesus through that couple, like St. Valentine did as a holy bishop in Rome. His bones were moved several times, and actually his skull is in a church overseas as well. So it's a beautiful glass reliquary. I'd love to have that for the museum, Wanda, but I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe a replica one day. But it's got flowers around it and things. And again, for those who have not seen any of our previous shows, Relics, we do have bones, we do have fingernails, hair, and different things. But a relic is almost similar to if you have a deceased loved one's, you know, wedding dress or a photograph. These, you know, are meaningful things, and obviously these bones, we have a reliquary of the bones of the apostles. These fragments of bones sat at the Last Supper table with Jesus. So just really, really neat symbolism through relics that we have to share. So, but St. Valentine's, remember on St. Valentine's Day of the bishop in Rome.
And he showed a lot of love, and that's where that comes, you know, where that feast comes from, is that he showed a lot of concern to people who were less fortunate, and it didn't matter what their status was. And so because of his example, it has turned out to be Valentine's Day.
And I can tell you one more thing too, that feast day, we've been celebrating Valentine's Day since 496 AD. So it's a very, very, holiday-wise, let alone feast day. We've been celebrating that for a long time across the world. So it's pretty cool.
Well, if we can get a picture of the image of Saint Blaise up, it shows Saint Blaise as a bishop. And as I said, he was born in Armenia. He was, we're not sure exactly, you know, of his birth date, but we do know that he died in the year 3:16. And there's a drawing of him and a woman with a child. And the story is that, well, we know that he actually lived, and we know of the healing that he did physically and spiritually for people, because it's written in the manuscript by a Greek physician. And so we have that history, that written history about Blaise. But the story is said that well, it was a difficult time for Christians to be living at that time, and the governor of Cappadocia sent soldiers to arrest Blaise. And on the way to jail, supposedly there was a woman whose son had fish bones caught in his throat, and she saw him as he was walking on his way to the jail, and asked Bishop Blaise to, cure her son, who, was choking on these fish bones, because his powers of healing were known far and wide, and people came to him all the time. So he prayed over the boy, and the next thing you knew, he coughed them up. Well, the governor, Agricola, was impressed by this miracle, but he still wanted Blaise to renounce his faith. And of course, Blaise wouldn't do it. So if you bring up the next image, this shows you an example of how he was tortured. He was beaten with a stick, and then wool combs were used to torture him before he was beheaded. And so that's how he died in the year 316. And if you will show the next picture, that shows you the candle that Shawn has. The one that you have is over 100 years old, and these are the kind of candles that are twisted at the end that have been used in Dubrovnik for a long time. And you'll notice in the photograph there's a red ribbon. If you'll show us the next image, that shows candles. They're not twisted, but they also have a red ribbon, and that is because...
You're going to tell us, aren't you?
You're going to tell, okay. Because in honor of Saint Blaise, because he was martyred. So
Absolutely.
The red ribbons are used to symbolize martyrdom. If you could bring the next picture up. That's a stone sculpture of Blaise, Saint Blaise, and when you are in the city of Dubrovnik, you find his image at the gates and other places all around the fortifications. And the reason is that back in the year 971, a priest was walking down the main street, and he noticed, he was the rector of the church, and he noticed that the doors were wide open. It was in the evening. It wasn't nightfall yet, but it was in the early evening, and he noticed that the doors were wide open, and that was unusual. So he went in, to close the door and kind of look around to see, what was going on, and he found an elderly man, a bearded man, sitting in one of the pews, and all of a sudden this gentleman spoke to him and said, "I've been waiting for you, and I've been keeping the Venetians at bay. They are ready to attack your city." And of course, the priest, Father Stoico was his name, he thought, well, who's this old man, telling me all these things? And he said, "Sir, what's your name?" And he said, "I'm Bishop Blaise." And then he disappeared. Well, this priest was confused. He thought, did I see this? Did I imagine this? Did I hear this? And he really didn't know what to do. And he was a little frightened by what he had heard. And he thought, well, should I share this with anybody? Will they think I'm crazy? And if I don't, will it harm the city? And so finally he decided to visit one of the city officials, and he told him, what he had envisioned and what this person had said. And they checked it out, and they noticed that there was a Venetian ship anchored nearby near one of the islands. And so this official called in the rest of the city council members, and they decided to act on it. They pulled up all the drawbridges, and they sent soldiers to all the turrets, and the next thing they knew, the Venetians had left. Now that was in the year 971, and the people felt that it was Bishop Saint Blaise who had saved the city from being attacked by the Venetians. So the following year, 972, they began a celebration in Dubrovnik that has lasted for over 1,000 years. It has never stopped, even during the communist era. Could we bring up the next photograph? So that's Blaise's connection to Dubrovnik. And you can see here, there's the church, Saint Blaise's Church, Sveti Vlaho in Croatian. And way at the top is a figure of Saint Blaise. If we go to the next picture, we can see a close-up. And there he is with his mitre in gold. And if you will go to the next one, please. That shows you the procession. People come from all over Croatia and really all over the world for this procession, and you'll notice flags in the procession down the center. Those flags are parish flags. Each church has a different flag. The one that you see up front, the white and the yellow, and if we could, if we were able to, we could see a figure of Saint Blaise on it. That's that parish church. But every village has their own parish flag with the figure of who their church is named for, and they get dressed in the regional costumes. You can see them there. And then in the next photograph, you can see additional regional costumes. There was a married couple. Of course, they dress like we do here in the United States, but for this particular celebration, they get dressed in their particular regional costumes. And if you will go to the next photograph, please. The flag bearer that carries the parish flag moves the flag in a certain manner, and I'm not sure whether it has a religious symbolism to it or not, but the way they move it, they all move it in the same way, in the same pattern, and it never touches the ground. And then after they are through maneuvering the flag, they fold it up and then they take it inside the church. Next picture, please. And also in the procession are priests and bishops who carry relics. And in this one, I think there are the hand of Saint Blaise. And you'll notice he is wearing gloves. And because these, and here is a bishop who's wearing gloves also, and these relics go back to 972. The goldsmiths of Dubrovnik were known all over the world for their craftsmanship, and you can see the gold, and then there are also precious gems in them as well. But note in the hand there's also a hanky, because as as they go through the procession, people can reverence the relic by touching it or kissing it. So if they kiss the relic, then the priest or the bishop will use that hanky to wipe it off. Could we go to the next one? Also in the procession, there you see one of the bishops, and the bishops from all the areas are part of the procession, but this one may be the bishop of Dubrovnik. He is carrying the skull of Saint Blaise, and that is also the relic. The reliquary was made by the goldsmiths of Dubrovnik. And behind them you see a canopy. If we go to the next photograph, you can see that, oh, I guess that one wasn't turned around. But anyway, that has, with that previous picture, had the swaddling clothes of Jesus. And the Franciscans who had come into Croatia had been in the Holy Land, and this is one of the things that they brought. And it's under the canopy, and those carrying the canopy, those are probably they're in their regional costumes, and I noticed the turbans, so they're probably Croatians from Bosnia. Then the goldsmiths also created a statue of Saint Blaise in gold, and the next photograph shows us a better picture. That's in the Church of Saint Blaise, but there you can see the hand, that the detail. It shows the city of Dubrovnik as it was back more than 1,000 years ago. And whenever you see the statues, or the statues of Saint Blaise in the niches around the fortification and above the walls, the gates, they all have that detail of what Dubrovnik looked like. So we know exactly what it looked like, and it has changed over the years, but not much. And then we have there's another picture. Part of the celebration also includes releasing a dove as a symbol of peace. Not only in Dubrovnik when there was the Civil War back in the 1990s, but years previous to that, their prayers were for peace all over the world. And so that has been a tradition over 1,000 years that has been part of this celebration. And the final image that we're going to look at, these are the Trombonieri. They are using the muskets that they used 1,000 years ago, and they go out to the harbor and they shoot them in the celebration of this special feast of this special saint who was part of their history. So these candles that Shawn brought today with the twisted ends are the kind of candles that are used in Dubrovnik and that are part of the Saint Blaise feast day.
Well, if I may say a word about the candle itself. In the Catholic Church we have the sacraments, but then we also have something called sacramentals, which is a big difference. And the best way to look at this, or a good analogy, is when you light a fire, it makes smoke. The smoke doesn't cause the fire. It's a result of the fire. So just like baptism, we're being cleansed of our sin through baptism. The sacramental is the water, but through Christ's grace, we are being cleansed of our sin. This is a sacramental. So this is being used to give the blessing, which causes Christ's grace to come in, his blessing to come in, but this is the instrument used. So this does not cause the blessing, that's done through the priest, but this is the instrument being used. So just an interesting thing. Look up sacramentals. We could talk all day about that in itself, but these are the kind of things that make the Catholic Church unique. And not just through our saints, but just through the different ceremonies and the different things that we do. This is probably very foreign to anybody who's not Catholic, a blessing of Saint Blaise. But another thing, blessings like this, in the Catholic Church, we ask, if you come to receive communion, for instance, we ask that you believe this is becoming Christ's body and blood, that you believe in all the councils, that you believe that the Pope is the successor of Peter. You've got to believe in these things to fully understand what's happening here, Christ's body and blood coming to earth through our priest. But we wouldn't ask people to show an outward sign that, you wouldn't do something that you don't believe in. So that's why we don't ask, non-Catholics to receive communion. And a lot of times Catholics themselves are not prepared to receive communion at church. They need to go to confession. Your soul is not cleansed of its sin. But these are the kind of things that even for non-Catholics, if you were at a Catholic Mass for the Feast of Saint Blaise, you could go up for the blessing, absolutely. And even non-Catholics, you could go up to the communion rail. And a lot of priests, if you cross your arms when you go to the rail, the priest will give you a blessing. This is something that can be bestowed upon anybody. So another neat thing, so if you're not a Catholic, but this Feast of Saint Blaise is coming up and you want a throat blessing, come up. And of course, Saint Blaise, people who he was a physical or a spiritual doctor as well as a doctor in life. So we believe that this will cure any element of the throat, or if you have a health condition, just like through the intercession of Saint Gerard Magellan, for instance. A lot of churches do blessings. If you want to conceive or have a safe delivery, if you're having a child, you go for his intercession. So a very neat thing, but again, that's something you don't have to be a Catholic for either for a blessing. So. But again, look up sacramentals, and please, this is just neat. The history, the stories, and these are the things that bring you closer to the faith, things that bring you closer to Jesus. Yeah, so I think it's pretty cool. I always, cool. Even as a kid, I was so excited to go up and get my throat blessed. I thought it was a neat thing, and the priest puts, through the intercession of Saint Blaise and then does the blessing. I always thought it was a neat thing. Blaise
is very well known throughout Croatia, but he has a special day or days in Dubrovnik. We are coming to the end of our program, so Shawn, is there anything that is coming up at the Jubilee Museum that you would like to share with our audience?
Absolutely. So I know you're Croatian, but I'm Irish, and St. Patrick's Day is coming up, and we're going to do a big Irish party at the museum this year. So the location is to be determined depending on how big it gets, but check out our website, jubileemuseum.org, and our Facebook page, Jubilee Museum. We'll be posting the date for that. It's going to be sometimes towards the end of March. It won't be St. Patrick's Day weekend, but we'll have a big Irish party fundraiser. So we'll have homemade corned beef and cabbage.
Sounds good.
It's best, and of course some Irish beer and things. But we have some lectures and talks coming up as well as we have some photography from a local artist going to be on display coming up in March and April. So check out our Facebook page. Come for a tour anytime. Our collection is growing, and we have big plans for the future. So God is good, and
you have a lecture this coming weekend, do you not?
I do. So we have World Marriage Day Sunday. So if you're interested, we are having an event at the museum itself, and I'm the lecturer. I don't know why, but I'm looking forward to it, and hopefully give a great talk for everybody and a chance to see the museum as well.
Hope you will join us this weekend, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda.